The Galactic Council's central chamber was a cathedral of arrogance. Monolithic spires of obsidian glass, air perfumed by synthetic oxygen, and a ceiling domed with artificial stars meant to evoke the illusion of universal unity. Yet, beneath that carefully engineered beauty was something sour and ancient: politics without mercy. The empires that ruled here did not coexist. They tolerated one another, trading diplomacy like barbed wire and arrogance like currency. Ambassador Thalen of Earth stood alone on the presentation platform, flanked by nothing more than a flickering hologram of a recent military exercise. He wore the standard gray envoy robes, polished boots, and a neural uplink woven discreetly into his collar. His spine was rigid, not from pride, but from habit, a survival posture adopted by all Earth diplomats who stepped into this place. The hologram paused mid-action. A human soldier, Captain Elias Marin, Earth's top-ranked shooter, lay in prone position behind a basalt outcropping, taking precise shots across a simulated battlefield. His rounds hit dead center each time, clean through the target. But the targets were obsolete, mannequins without adaptive shielding, drones that bled sparks. When the simulation shifted to Velthari armored units, the results changed. Each shot ricocheted. The laughter began before the demonstration ended. Not raucous, but amused, like a condescending teacher watching a child mispronounce a basic word. A Xerix noble, coiled in a throne of bone and glass, clicked his tongue. Projectile-based weapons? How quaint. We expected a threat, not a performance. The Velthari emissary flicked an appendage, dismissive. Tell me, Ambassador, how does Earth intend to hold territory it cannot pierce? Thalen didn't flinch, though his stomach curled. This demonstration was meant to showcase discipline and technique, not brute force. Another murmur of derision passed through the chamber like a wave of contempt. A few delegates didn't bother hiding their smirks. Others, like the krill observer, whose species used sonic warfare, simply turned away in boredom. Thalen knew the battle was lost before it began. Earth was the upstart, the species that still remembered how to bleed. In this chamber, bleeding was for the primitive. And humanity, in the eyes of these ancients, was still crawling from its cradle, holding a rifle like a child grips a stick. The session adjourned without comment. Rejection was understood. Earth would not be admitted to the Strategic Defense Compact. The official reason would be insufficient technological parity. The real reason was humiliation. In the corridor outside the chamber, Thalen activated a secure channel using the embedded chip in his wrist. Authentication: Echo Sierra 1. Prepare contingency protocol. The voice that responded was deep, unflinching. Confirm authorization. He paused. Code black. Confirmed. Initiating. Far from the opulence of the council halls, buried deep in the uninhabited zones of Earth's moon, a facility blinked to life. It had no name. It existed off the books, out of time, and beyond oversight. Inside, behind carbon seal vaults and rows of cryogenic stasis tubes, a single chamber hissed open. Corporal Isaac Raith's eyes opened to darkness. He didn't sit up at first. Training kept him still, mind booting faster than muscle. He registered the hiss of oxygen vents, the reactivation of artificial synaptic pulses reconnecting his augment circuits. Then came the slow flex of fingers, the curling of toes, the return of sensation like static along his skin. He rose without a sound. The room was lit only by dim red strips. No one greeted him. No one debriefed him. That was how it had always been. He moved through the corridors like a phantom, each step soundless, body responding as if he had never left. His hair was cropped, skin pale from stasis. A faded serial code etched behind his ear read, RTH-07. In the armory, his rifle waited for him. He ran his hand along its length. It wasn't new. It was his, worn, modified, perfectly weighted, built for precision and silence. A bolt-action mass driver with an AI-assisted compensator, gravity-stabilized chassis, and a suppressor long enough to mute thunder. It was called Ruin. A screen flared to life on the wall. Mission parameters displayed in white text against a black background. Target: Valkyris 9. Objective: infiltrate logistics node. Dismantle planetary shield array. Opposition: Xerix infantry, Velthari officers, indigenous hazards. Status: solo deployment. No extraction. Raith read it twice. He remembered Valkyris. Not because he'd fought there before, but because of its terrain profile. Dense jungle, poisonous atmosphere, thermal interference from underground magma pockets. A perfect death trap for a standard unit. But he wasn't standard. He was what Earth used when protocol failed. In a launch bay, a drop pod waited, sleek, black, silent. The technician who monitored final systems said nothing to him. She didn't need to. There was no tradition here, no send-off. Just efficiency. That was part of the design. He climbed into the pod. The hatch closed with a hiss. There was a moment of stillness, that final breath between nothing and violence. Raith closed his eyes, not to center himself, but to narrow the world. To turn into distances, wind factors, kill markers, escape routes. Then came the ignition. He was a bullet fired from a moon. Atmosphere screamed against the drop pod as it pierced Valkyris' upper layers, heat ablating off in angry sheets. The jungle loomed below like a living ocean, green, coiling, hungry. The pod struck ground with the force of a meteor, mud and ferns exploding around it. Then silence. Raith stepped out, boots sinking slightly into the wet ground. His armor immediately adjusted to the biome, camo layers shifting to mimic the moss and shadows. Filters kicked in, scrubbing the air of toxins. His rifle clicked into place on his back. The jungle around him hissed with life. Distant alien shrieks, wing beats, the hum of things unseen. He calibrated his HUD. No nearby patrols. Yet, his first move wasn't toward the objective. It was deeper into the jungle, where the Xerix wouldn't look, at least, not at first. He needed to vanish completely before he could start erasing them. Not from life, from control, from morale, from the illusion that their dominion was complete. A sniper didn't just kill. A sniper unmade certainty. The jungle grew thicker with each step, ferns tall as buildings, roots like rib cages protruding from the soil. The deeper he went, the quieter everything became, as if even the flora knew to make way for something worse than predators. At a small clearing, Raith crouched beneath a tree knotted with crimson fruit. He laid out a small signal scrambler, buried it in the mud, activated its pulse. From this moment forward, satellite tracking would show nothing in this region. Just static, dead zones. He was off the board. The only thing that would follow him now was legend. Far above, in a secure war room hidden beneath Earth's surface, General Rourke watched the same holographic battlefield replay the Council had mocked. His aide stood behind him, silent. "They're not laughing now," the general muttered. A blinking signal pulsed once on his screen. Raith active. Confirmed infiltration. Rourke smiled, thin and sharp. "Let them send fleets," he said. "We sent a single man." In the jungles of Valkyris 9, Isaac Raith climbed into a perch high among the vines, lying flat with ruin across his chest, watching the distant glow of the logistics hub shimmer like a heartbeat beneath the trees. He had no audience, no backup, no margin for error, and no intention of missing. Mud swallowed Raith's boots to the ankles with every step, thick and sucking like the jungle itself wanted to drag him under. The canopy above let through slivers of pale green light that dappled the terrain in shifting patterns. Thick vines twisted around trees the width of fusion reactors, and the air was heavy with moisture, spores, and the low pulse of something alive and watching. Valkyris 9 wasn't just hostile. It was sentient in its silence. He moved slowly, one calculated shift at a time, rifles slung diagonally across his back, camo adapting to mimic the slick foliage. His helmet filtered out the toxic spores and hissed softly every few minutes to dehumidify the inner seal. The base of his spine itched where the neural interface pulsed with low-level feedback. Minor, constant corrections fed to his limbs, muscles, and balance. The gear was top tier, but Raith didn't rely on tech. He trusted silence, stillness, shadow. Up ahead, The undergrowth dipped into a shallow ravine where the enemy had built a mobile relay station, short range, armored lightly, guarded by a four-man team. It wasn't part of his primary objective, but it pulsed out signals strong enough to scan troop movements and shortwave comms. He knelt on a ridge and studied them through the scope. One of the soldiers paced, his massive form armored in obsidian plates etched with glowing veins of violet. Xerix design, bulky but functional. The others lounged in a makeshift shelter, weapons at hand, but eyes dull from routine. They weren't expecting resistance, let alone death from a forest they believed tame. He marked their heart lines, counted steps between them, noted their fields of fire. He checked the wind, light and southward. Then he adjusted the rifle's compensator, setting for micro-trajectory curvature caused by the magnetic fields native to the moon. One breath in. Exhale. Fire. The pacing soldier dropped without a sound, the round entering beneath the helmet's lip and severing his spine. The others didn't even look up for 2 seconds. Raith was already moving, rifle slung again, repositioning laterally through the brush. A second shot rang out. One soldier collapsed trying to radio. A third was running when he died, body cartwheeling into the relay post. The last one stood frozen for a heartbeat too long. Raith stepped from the cover of a tree, drew his suppressed sidearm, and fired a single round. The soldier collapsed backward with a dull grunt. He moved quickly now, disabling the relay's core with a short EMP burst. The signal stuttered and died. More importantly, it triggered the enemy's response protocols. They'd come looking. Raith left no trace. No shell casings, no footprints, no energy residue. To the Xerix, it would look like the jungle had swallowed their men whole. He continued toward the objective. The shield generator was housed beneath a large logistics compound 5 kilometers east, buried under layers of reinforced jungle and wetland. Recon had shown troop movements, drone flights, energy readings, enough to confirm high-value assets. Taking it out would cripple a third of the Xerix's defense grid. But he wasn't going to storm it. Raith wasn't a hammer. He was a scalpel. Night fell hard and fast. The jungle transformed into a biome of sound. Shrill, pulsing, organic noises unlike anything on Earth. Trees moved. Vines recoiled. The moon had its own rhythm, and Raith moved with it. He found a ridge near the compound perimeter, cloaked in foliage and elevation. The enemy base glowed with alien tech, smooth, curved architecture, pulsing with steady light, and patrolled by bipeds whose eyes glimmered like molten glass. Drones hovered in search grids, emitting a low-frequency hum that he avoided by timing his movements between rotations. He spent hours observing. Inside the central structure, he saw them. Command officers, engineers, support staff, non-combatants by alien standards. Vulnerable. He could end them all in a minute. But his goal wasn't chaos. It was disruption. Every empire relied on systems. Power, protocol, command flow. If you snapped a link in the right place, everything stalled. He sighted the power conduit leading into the shield matrix, buried beneath a vent stack and protected by 2 guards. Their armor was thick, but exposed at the underarms when they turned. Raith waited until the wind shifted again. 2 shots, both clean. The bodies fell where they stood. He slid down the incline in complete silence, boots brushing vines, rifle secured. At the base of the structure, he planted a data spike into the terminal. Earth's tech, designed specifically for this one job, to override the Xerix operating logic for 30 seconds and initiate a cooling purge. He tapped in a sequence and melted back into shadow. 3 minutes later, steam vented from the generators, causing panic and temporary lockdowns. Doors sealed. Power flickered. Raith moved like smoke through the confusion. He climbed the side of the compound using vines and support struts, pausing only to disable a lone drone with a garrote wire and crush its sensor core. From a roof, he had eyes on the interior courtyard, where officers were shouting orders, trying to restore order. He took one down with a shot to the base of the throat. Another turned to look and died the same second. Then the rest ran for cover, dragging the fallen behind barriers. Raith was gone before their first volley struck the rooftop. He fled into the trees. By the time the enemy began their counter-sweep, He was over a kilometer away, submerged chest-deep in a swamp with nothing but his eyes above water and rifle on his back. He waited. They came in formation, disciplined, precise. Zarek's hunter squads, equipped with motion sensors and thermal readers. They fanned out in a wide arc. Too wide. Raith watched them from beneath the roots of a dead tree. One of them paused, scanning the muck. The visor turned toward him. He didn't move. A mosquito-like creature landed on the soldier's shoulder. The visor turned away. They passed. He surfaced hours later when their signals finally faded from his HUD. The moon was half-lit now. Stars blinked through the canopy. He lay back in the mud and let the heat leave his body, letting his internal systems regulate slowly. No sudden changes. No risk of detection. He'd lived more hours like this than in beds. He allowed a memory to come, not of battle, but of silence. A child's laugh once. A field. Then the flash of artillery. He opened his eyes. The jungle was quiet now, reset. His breath fogged inside the helmet. He stood. The data spike had worked. The generator would remain vulnerable for the next 48 hours. Earth had its window, but Raith knew it wouldn't be enough. The empires would counter. They would adapt. They always did, unless he made them fear. He needed something bigger, bolder. He turned his gaze north, toward the final ridge, an old signal relay that hadn't been touched in decades. Buried, forgotten, but still capable of broadcasting. If he reached it, he could send a message. Not just Earth, to the entire Galactic Council. Let them know what was coming. He checked his rounds. 37 left. It will be enough. The wind shifted just enough to carry the scent of plasma burns and scorched foliage. Raith crouched low on a branch, half covered in leaves, observing the Zarek's compound through the narrow slit of his visor. The last 48 hours had stretched the garrison to the breaking point. First the loss of their relay, then the compound blackout, followed by surgical assassinations of 3 command officers. The jungle wasn't quiet anymore. It buzzed with fear. Raith could see it in their posture. Soldiers no longer walked confidently through the base. Their movements were tighter, quicker, eyes flicking constantly. Search patterns were disjointed. Perimeter drones flew closer together, overlapping coverage zones, betraying a change in doctrine. Defense had turned to desperation. The effect wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. Fear fractured unity, and Raith knew how to make fear permanent. He exhaled slowly and adjusted his grip on ruin, his rifle balanced on a branch beside him. The weapon was damp with jungle moisture, but maintained calibration perfectly. Ahead, a Zarek's lieutenant barked orders at a patrol squad, unaware that his voice echoed through the canopy with crisp clarity. Raith watched the alien turn toward the shield tower, gestures sharp and erratic. He made note of the lieutenant's face, not for the kill list, for the message. A high-value target needed to vanish in a way that left no pattern, no closure. He marked his range. Wind, minimal. Interference, none. Firing solution, 97.3% confidence. He fired. The round hit just below the alien's jaw, splintering upward through the cranium with no exit wound. Death was instantaneous, silent, and clean. The body collapsed into a kneel, still upright for a beat too long before falling over. The soldiers around him panicked. No one knew where the shot had come from. Some fired randomly into the trees. Others dove for cover. Raith was already gone, ghosting through the canopy to a secondary overwatch point 300 meters east. He moved with methodical precision, each limb obeying long-trained rhythms. He didn't rush. Patience, not speed, won wars. Hours later, a Zarek's distress signal pinged across local comms. Reinforcements had been requested from orbit, but the message stuttered. Raith had anticipated this and buried an interference device beneath the comms uplink the day before. Enough to delay them, enough to deepen the isolation. That night, Raith listened to their fear. He eavesdropped on scrambled transmissions, garbled by desperation, unknown hostile, anti-energy weapon, request immediate response, unidentified life form, cannot confirm species. He smiled faintly. They no longer thought he was human. That was good. Let them imagine worse. At dawn, he entered the ruins. The structure had once been a long-range planetary relay, decommissioned decades ago when the Xerics centralized their communications through orbital satellites. Now it stood like a skeleton in the jungle, twisted metal, collapsed towers, and moss-covered control nodes. But the core was still intact. Raith entered through a gap in the west wall, scanning for heat and motion. Nothing. Dust and old circuits. The place had been forgotten by everyone, except him. He moved to the control console, brushing aside a tangle of vines. His suit interfaced with the ancient system, a process that took minutes. Earth's tech had prepared for this. Backdoors, scramblers, converters. It didn't need to dominate alien tech, just speak long enough to send a pulse. A message, not in words, in precision. He uploaded 3 files. Each one was a recording from his scope. 3 confirmed kills, each with biometric overlays, coordinates, timestamps. Each kill had been clean, swift, unavoidable. Then a 4th file. A name, a target, undesignated. Whoever watched would know. It was a warning. Transmission pinged across secured diplomatic channels. The encryption key was buried in the Council's own archives. No one outside of the Galactic government could read it. And yet, Raith had sent it from the field, alone, behind enemy lines. A message not just of capability, of certainty. He left before the system began its automatic shutdown. By midday, the jungle echoed with movement. The Xerics had deployed a war hunter. Raith saw it from a kilometer away, a towering figure of composite armor and engineered flesh, stalking through the marsh like a predator above the food chain. Its visor glowed amber, scanning in all spectrums. Each footfall left a chemical signature meant to disrupt camouflage. Its rifle was half as long as Wraith's body. It wasn't there to patrol. It was there to kill him. He watched it from high in a tree, motionless as bark. His HUD marked the war hunter's movements and predictive paths. It was methodical, controlled, not like the panicked soldiers before. This one had experience. And if the stories were true, a kill count in the thousands. Raith didn't fear it, but he respected it. He retreated carefully. He could not afford a direct engagement. Not yet. The war hunter's tech was superior in close quarters. Raith needed distance, surprise, control. He let it. For the next 6 hours, he manipulated terrain, activated old traps, rerouted predator lures to force the war hunter's path. He used ancient ruins, swamp gas, environmental distortions. A game of chess played in mud and decay. It began to work. By nightfall, the war hunter moved slower. Its scans looped more often. Its steps faltered. It had been moving through a maze it didn't understand. And in that gap of understanding, Raith saw the flaw. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was. He found a ridge near a waterfall, one of the few elevated positions with stable footing. He waited there, rifle set, scope adjusted. The war hunter approached, scanning, pacing, aware of the danger, but unable to pinpoint it. Raith's breath slowed. Wind calm. Shot aligned. But he didn't fire. He let the war hunter pass, cataloging every detail. Armor seams, gait pattern, sensor ports. He needed more. One shot wouldn't be enough to kill it. He needed 3, or 1, placed perfectly. He spent the next hours building the shot. Using trajectory overlays and the war hunter's predictable arc, he identified a moment, less than 1 second, where the armor's helmet shifted to adjust atmospheric intake. A micro-movement that revealed an inch of vulnerability. That was the window. He set the rifle. Waited. The jungle slept around him. Even the insects fell silent. Then the war hunter came again. It stopped, turned its head. Its visor locked on something. Raith didn't know what. But he knew the time had come. He fired. The round punched through the gap at the base of the helmet. The war hunter staggered. Not dead, but wounded. A crack formed down the side of its visor. Fluid leaked from the breach. It fired blindly, scattering energy into the treetops, burning branches and vaporizing leaves. Raith had already moved, ghosting into the undergrowth. The war hunter bellowed, a sound that shook the water around them. Now it would hunt him personally, and Raith would let it, because now it was angry, and anger meant mistakes. He retreated into the thickest part of the jungle, where sensors faltered and instinct ruled, where shadow was a weapon. Tomorrow, the War Hunter would come, and Raith would be ready. Rain fell in fine sheets, slicking the jungle in a skin of silver and steam. Trees swayed gently under the weight of water, their twisted branches creaking above the thrum of distant generators. Raith lay prone beneath a curtain of vines, eyes fixed through the scope of his rifle, heartbeat slow, breath measured. The War Hunter had entered the kill zone. Its armored form moved deliberately, cautious now, its steps less mechanical and more instinctual. The damage to its helmet hadn't impaired its senses, but had changed its rhythm. It paused more often, scanned more thoroughly, lingered longer in its decision-making. It had begun to learn, adapt. But so had Raith. For hours, he had watched it circle the ruins, drawing it deeper into the overgrowth where sensor interference thickened and clear lines of sight became scarce. The kill zone was a narrow corridor between two collapsed support pylons, flanked by jagged rock and low shrubs that concealed pressure charges he had rigged the night before. They wouldn't kill the War Hunter, but they'd force movement, and movement created opportunities. Through the scope, Raith watched its breathing, shallow, controlled. Its visor still glowed amber, cracked but active. A small strip of flesh around the left shoulder joint had been exposed where his last round had grazed armor plating. That too was a target, but not the one he needed. He waited. The War Hunter paused near the second pylon, scanning the tree line. It hesitated, then moved forward. Raith triggered the first charge. The explosion was sharp, brief, more flash than force. The War Hunter flinched left, exactly as calculated. The second charge followed instantly, blasting mud and metal shards into its path. It staggered, just enough to drop a knee for balance. Raith fired. The round struck the exposed shoulder, fracturing bone and snapping synthetic muscle fibers. The War Hunter roared a guttural, almost human sound, then spun and fired wildly into the ridge above. Energy bolts sizzled against stone. Vines ignited. Branches split apart and tumbled, burning. But Raith was already moving, silent in the chaos. He dropped low, rolling down a slope, camo mesh shifting to match the charred terrain. The War Hunter sensors swept past him without recognition. It was bleeding now, thick, green ichor seeping from the shoulder wound. Its movement slowed again, each step deliberate, pained. It knew. This wasn't just a sniper anymore. This was an execution. Raith relocated to a secondary perch, 30 meters to the east, beneath the remains of an old sensor dish. From here, he had a clean angle on the War Hunter's back, but the shot wouldn't be lethal. It would waste ammunition he couldn't spare. He steadied his breath. The War Hunter began scanning again, voice modulator crackling. Identify yourself. Show yourself. Speak. Raith said nothing. The War Hunter paused, then slowly turned its head. I know you're not machine, it continued. You kill with choice. Still silence. Raith watched the shift in stance, the way the creature lowered its rifle slightly. Not out of confidence, but fatigue. Beneath the armor, it was weakening, but it was also thinking. Not just hunting, but understanding. He needed off balance. He moved again, deliberately making noise this time. Just a crunch, a snap of bark beneath his boot. The War Hunter turned instantly, firing into the foliage. Raith circled wide, reached the southern edge of the kill zone, and climbed a steep incline overlooking the generator complex. The shield core stood below, humming with power, massive and glowing with interlinked conduits. Pulses of blue-white energy arced along its surface, protected by an array of sentry towers and patrol drones. But they weren't watching him. They were focused on the War Hunter. The confrontation had drawn every sensor signature in a 5-kilometer radius. Raith had used the distraction well. Now came the final stage. He placed the charges. There were 6 shaped thermite bombs tuned to overload the core's cooling systems. Once detonated, they would create a feedback cascade through the internal matrix, frying the central node and collapsing the energy lattice. The shield would fall, and Earth's fleet, waiting in low orbit, would have its opening. He set the timer. 5 minutes. The War Hunter appeared again, below the ridge, weapon lowered, head tilted as if sensing something beyond the noise. Raith descended slowly. No camouflage now. No shadows. He wanted to see him. The war hunter raised its rifle. Raith didn't flinch. "You missed your window," he said, voice flat through the vocoder. The war hunter's grip tightened. "You're alone. I'm enough. You think this wins your war? No. This just starts it." The war hunter stepped forward. "Then finish it." Raith dove left as the plasma bolt scorched the air beside him. He landed hard, rolled, fired upward. The round struck the war hunter's thigh, driving it to a knee. It roared and lunged, massive frame crashing through ferns and ash. Raith fired again, hitting the exposed portion of the chest plate. Sparks erupted, fluid sprayed. But the war hunter kept coming. They collided at the base of the ridge. Raith slid beneath its first swing, jamming the barrel of his rifle into the breach in the chest plate and firing point blank. The war hunter screamed, stumbling backward, limbs twitching, rifle dropping from its hand. Raith rose. One more shot. He aimed directly at the cracked visor. The war hunter looked up. "You are human," it whispered. Raith pulled the trigger. The visor shattered, the head snapped back, and the body collapsed in the mud with a hiss of steam. He stood over it for a moment, breathing heavily, then turned and ran. The charges detonated in sequence as he cleared the blast radius. Light erupted behind him, a column of searing white surging into the sky as the generator core ruptured. Energy lanced upward, then snapped inward, imploding with a thunderclap that shook the jungle to its roots. The shield above shimmered, fractured, then fell apart like glass, disintegrating into the upper atmosphere. Raith didn't watch it fall. He moved into the trees, tracking back toward the ruins. He had one more task. At the old relay station, power still hummed faintly in backup cells. Just enough. He accessed the transmission panel, tapped in a short code. No message, no voice, just coordinates, kill markers, target IDs, confirmed impacts, a demonstration. The data pulsed out, bouncing from satellite to council node, buried in diplomatic logs. A final fragment followed it, encrypted, undeniable, authenticated by the systems of Valkyris 9 itself. One line of text. Galactic Empires laughed at Earth's shooter. So Earth sent its deadliest sniper. He doesn't miss. Raith leaned back against the crumbling wall, helmet off, rain soaking into his hair. His hands trembled slightly, exhaustion, not fear. He had completed the mission, but he knew this wasn't the end. The message would reach the council. They would convene. There would be retaliation, but not before hesitation, not before fear. He closed his eyes and let the rain wash over him. Somewhere above, Earth's fleet would see the shield drop and move in. Raith wouldn't be there for the follow-through. He was done. He faded back into the jungle without sound, the leaves closing behind him like a curtain. The ghost returned to the shadows.